Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Speijk. We're continuing with these Research Bureau ships, seeing whether they're worth getting in 2025. It takes a long time to grind research points, so is it worth that time to get some of these ships? Today with the Speijk, we're going to be comparing it mostly to the Dutch heavy cruiser line. For obvious reasons, this is a side grade on the Johan at tier 9. It's a little bit like tier 10 where we have the Gouden and the PVO. Gouden very airstrike focused with some pretty good guns, but not as good as the PVO. That ship has incredible gun power. You can think of this as a tier 9 counterpart to that. With the PVO being only available for steel, quite expensive to get, mostly reserved for those playing competitive game modes like clan battles. Speijk allows you to get a gun-focused Dutch heavy cruiser at high tier for research points. You just have to grind through it. And I had a really good time in this ship. I'm going to show you that today and talk a little bit about the differences with the tech tree line, because there are some meaningful differences here. Specifically to do with the tankiness or overall survivability of this ship. It has really good concealment, but it retains the 40-second heal cooldown that the main line gets. The PVO does not have that. In exchange, though, the PVO only has 30-second fire duration, where the main line has 60-second fire duration. Bit of a downside there, but you get the heals back sooner. With the Speijk, we get the best of both worlds here. This ship has the 40-second heal cooldown, which is really handy, alongside only having 30-second fires. So you're quite a bit tankier to HE spam, as well as AP not going to do quite as much to you. The GK got a pretty good hit into us, but typically you're not going to eat that much damage thanks to the armor profile. We'll of course look at that towards the end of this video in port, but a 30 mil deck armor with 50 mil plating on our upper belt with icebreaker means this ship is quite tanky to armor piercing, surprisingly so. And with this heal cooldown and concealment, it allows me to play some more aggressive open water even positions that I otherwise would not consider in cruisers, especially into some of these up tiers. In this match here, getting us an insane amount of spotting by the end, but we've already got over 60k spotting, as well as getting some good damage in. Of course, though, with these Dutch ships, you have to talk about these airstrikes. That is a key portion of the damage output and the utility that these ships do bring. They can deal a lot of damage over islands and at really long ranges with the Speijk here. You get 15-kilometer airstrike range. Not many ships are capable of that, really just the PVO and the Speijk here. You do not have quite as good of bombs as the PVO does, but you get a little bit better reload, as well as, crucially, you have shorter drop times. So you have the standard drop times from the Gouden and Johan, it's like 13.5 seconds, where the PVO gets like 15.5 seconds or so to drop its bomb. So you have a much more difficult time leading. The downside, though, being longer reload than the Johan, as well as just having one airstrike available to you. I thought that was a big downside back when I was first looking at this ship. I thought it was really bad. The more I've played these Dutch ships, though, especially with the new commander giving us the extra airstrike drop on 50 bomb hits, as well as playing the new light cruisers, I've realized that if we get into the right positions, which we should be trying to, we're usually using our last airstrike on cooldown. We're often not actually making use of the extra reloads and extra strikes that we can save up. So for Speijk, that is a downside at the beginning of the game when you can't save up 1, 2, like 3 airstrikes, something like that, with the light cruisers, or even 3 with leg mod Gouden. But as soon as you've used all of those initial drops, typically I find myself using that initial strike on cooldown and not really saving them up. Maybe a little bit in the mid game, but not too often, so less of a downside than I thought. Then at that point, we're just having extra range on relatively easy strikes to land here, and it works out quite well for this ship. It's not its main source of damage, of course, the main guns, the HE here doing quite good, a lot of fires, of course, the AP even worth using. This ship has cruiser dispersion, so you can get a lot more value out of these main guns relative to the tech tree. Again, it is very much like that Gouden versus Prins van Oranje at tier 10 comparison. Compared to Johan, we do have a little bit more DPM on these guns, as well as better accuracy, so more effective DPM, I would say. The tankiness continues on the broadside, though, with this ship. Again, we'll look at the armor towards the end. All of these ships do get turtleback, but typically it's only 25 millimeters on pretty much all of these Dutch heavy cruisers. Not so with Van Speijk. You actually get a 30 mil turtleback, which allows you to bounce and actually have a worthwhile turtleback against up to 406 millimeter guns. It's the Republic 430s that start to overmatch you there. AP even getting a Citadel in the Moskva at those ranges there. Very nice. So for me, the real reason to get this ship, to grind for these research points, is if you're not able to get yourself a PVO at tier 10 very easily. Steel can be very difficult to come by, especially if you're not interested in playing those competitive game modes, of course, where research points anyone can get with enough time required, of course. It is quite a lot to do, and the tech tree, the main line, is very similar to this ship. You're going to have worse dispersion, and you'll see throughout this video that the improved dispersion helps us out a lot, especially against destroyers. Against battleships and larger cruisers, the battle cruiser dispersion we see on the tech tree is fine. It's good enough. But against the smaller ships, or if you're trying to use AP into broadsides, it is very, very nice to have that better dispersion. Of course, though, the light cruisers are pretty incredible these days, the farming potential, and even better airstrikes. Not as much range, of course, but they reload so quickly. The DPM on Van Speijk is not that impressive, though. It is a gun-focused Dutch heavy cruiser here. A little bit less so on the airstrikes compared to the main line. But relative to your tier 9 counterparts, it's pretty middle of the road. It's not that impressive for its HE or AP DPM, so don't get this ship thinking it's going to be some DPM monster with the main guns here. It's just a little bit better than Johan. You still need to be making good use of these airstrikes to get a lot of damage out of this ship. It's a hybrid ship focused on these airstrikes and main guns, but you probably knew that getting into the Dutch line, of course. That's what these ships do. A little bit worse on the main guns in exchange for having these crazy airstrikes, which do have enough pen to get through the devastation there. That is a bit of a downside compared to the PVO, where you get 46 millimeters of pen. That long flight time, that long lead time, as well as the long range, is very nice on PVO with the pen, especially 46. So on Van Speijk, you only get 36 millimeters of pen, which is the same as Johan. You also have a slightly bigger drop reticle with the same number of bombs. So the bomb density here on Van Speijk is a little bit lower compared to the Johan. So you may find that even if a target is well within your drop reticle, you might not get as many consistent hits off on the enemy ships, which is a little bit frustrating at times, and especially because the reload is quite a bit longer. You can only ever have one strike saved up, unless you get those 50 hits with the Special Commander Conrad. The damage is the same as Johan with these bombs as well, at 6100 alpha, with a 35% fire chance. They're fine. They're good airstrikes, but the real key here is having the standard drop time with the extra range from the PVO. Although I guess it would be from the Van Speijk, since the ship came out before the PVO. Our AA is okay. It's worse than Johan. Dutch cruisers typically have really good AA where the carrier does not want to come after you. But with the Van Speijk, you have the Haarlem hull, which is the tier 8. And while the AA is somewhat upgraded on the continuous DPS, you still don't have the full kit of flak, which is the main damage output that's actually going to shoot down planes before the drop happens. And that is still at that tier 8 level, which is not all that amazing. We do get a defensive fire, of course, which we want to be using against those planes, but you're still going to be eating strikes. That's not much of a surprise, probably. We all know how carriers are these days. But it is a little unfortunate when some of the higher tier ones, the Dutch line, are a bit of a no-fly zone, as much as you can say that these days. So Immelman here, getting some drops in on us. We're maneuverable enough to dodge a lot of it, but you do have to be aware that if you're dodging the strike, you're probably not dodging the incoming fire from the enemy team. So you do have to be a little bit careful there. Trying to finish off the Immelman here, not using our Airstrike on him because I don't believe we would be penning his deck armor. So that's why I used the Airstrike there on the Azuma. So we do manage to get ourselves a Kraken in this one. Absolutely wild game, nearly 200,000 damage, Kraken, Confederate, and 147,000 spotting damage. Into a super ship game with carriers, of all things. I don't know how we got that much spotting damage, but we did. The extra tankiness on this ship, as well as the really good concealment, allowing me to rack up a lot of spotting damage on that flank early on. You don't have to play the flank like that. It is much safer, of course, to play on islands. But we managed to make it work there. Unfortunately, not proccing everything on Conrad, but don't you worry, that's what this game is for. We're going to start a little ways in here. Bit of a weird dispersion on that first salvo on the Holland, but then we land everything else with our back turret. As always, back turret, best turret. The cruiser dispersion on this ship really does help its consistency quite a lot. We talk about effective DPM or hitting DPM with secondaries quite a lot, as that really dictates how valuable it is to spec into them. But with main guns as well, I think it's really important to make note of the cruiser dispersion on this ship versus battlecruiser dispersion on the tech tree. It's a really big difference. You will notice the consistency out of these main guns. That's one of the reasons that I love the PVO at tier 10 over the Gouden. If I want to run full Airstrike gimmick, sure, Legmod Gouden is crazy. Utrecht, of course, also insane at that. But if I want more of a main gun focus, PVO is awesome. The guns on that ship are amazing. The guns on this one aren't that good, of course. They don't have the caliber, the damage output, the extra volume of shells, right? PVO not only gets nice range, accuracy, really high damaging shells, but it also gets 12 guns. This one still retains the 9 guns. It's essentially an up-tiered Harlem in that case. But having the cruiser dispersion helps us a lot against these DDs, man. Even aiming over these islands here, doing a little bit of mini-map aiming, allowing us to land some salvos and finish him off. I have talked up the armor here, but I do have to show you the downside of having an overmatchable bow in this case against a main. This ship is typically going to auto-bounce a lot of what main has to offer, but if he hits us in the right spot, the damage can be immense. And with 16 shells, he's probably going to get some damage into us with that overmatch. The bow being 25 millimeters, fully overmatchable by a main. At these ranges, you'd hope you don't take too much damage from it, but we're going to get smashed here pretty good. I really want to take these kinds of positions, though, where I'm helping my destroyers as well as able to farm with these main guns, not just focus on the airstrikes. I think you're going to have a really bad time with this ship if you're focused on getting behind large islands and just focusing on the airstrikes. You're not going to do much damage that way. You have to use these main guns. Take a big hit from the main there. In fact, that was a Citadel. This ship, unfortunately, only has 10% Citadel repair. Really disappointing that. It's the same with Johan, Harlem. Gouden and PVO actually get 33% Citadel repair, which is quite nice. But yeah, that hurt quite a lot. And the next salvo, yeah, another 20k. That one, I don't know if he got a Citadel into us. You're going to see with the armor profile at the end of the video that was quite unfortunate to eat a Citadel there. And the overmatch, sure, taking some full pens there, but I did not expect that much damage from a main. Something that has 30 millimeters of overmatch, yes, for sure, but did not expect that. So we're in a little bit of trouble here. Fortunately, the fast heal cooldown has our back. I've talked about this a lot in almost all of my videos. Heals are my favorite in this game, allowing me to take bad positions, to take poor decisions at the beginning of games, trying to make plays, and I get punished for it, but I can still heal back from it. And with these fast cooldown heals especially, I really, really love being able to play aggressively and take risks, allowing me to heal back from it relatively quickly. I did waste my initial heal there when I took that initial Citadel bow on from the main there. Not healing much back from that from that heal, but that's okay. We get back to our next one, and we're in relatively good shape here to face a Viasma, which also overmatches our bow. Yeah, tier 9 cruisers, man. Man, Speik's pretty tanky, but nowhere near a Viasma level of tankiness. Trying to hit his superstructure or even his bow section there, which we should be able to full pen, but Somehow we're hitting just the sections that we're going to shatter on, unfortunately. Getting a double fire there, though, and he goes down. Fortunately, our Hoffman saving us there from a little bit more damage there from that unfortunate burst firing experimental ship. Hopefully, Wargaming gets the message, and we don't have to deal with those for too much longer. This game, however, is very, very close, and another full double up tier for us to deal with. Using island cover to use our main guns, but also just to get some damage in on this main with our airstrikes here, trying to whittle them down so our teammates can help us take them out. Unfortunately, our Napoli went down, but luckily for us, we have some very good destroyer players on our team, which are going and getting the caps. The enemy team appears to be coming for the A cap here, both battleships for sure. We also see some AA fire from what's likely the enemy destroyer, so we want to call that out. While these planes, these airstrikes, do not plane spot, which is a good thing, by the way, we can still see the AA fire. And what is that? That is a Witherer proc. Yes, the best buff from Conrad. So finally, we're getting ourselves our damage, our DPM upgrade here. And about to proc our third form of just alpha damage buff as well at 150,000 damage. Conrad is not amazing on this ship, I don't think. I think it is better served on the tech tree ships, the mainline ships, just because you're going to get a lot more value out of those airstrikes. But farming Witherers, this one does all right. I mean, the fires per minute aren't insane either. Again, it is just Harlem shells. I suppose the extra accuracy that we have will help out, but a fires per minute of 5.6 is pretty low for a tier 9 cruiser. Johan at 6.8, Gouden 7.2, PVO 8.1. You're going to get a lot more fires out of those other ships, as well as the extra DPM they have on their airstrikes, which should also be landing fires. So farming up a Witherer here with Conrad, I know this is very specific to very hard to get ship plus very hard to get commander, at least right now. 15k, actually that was close to 17k in Colombo. Actually crazy that we got that much damage in on him. Wild stuff there. So it can happen, the Witherer can happen, and it is much better when it does. This airstrike does get down to 64, 65 second to reload here with some AR as well. That's pretty nice. Especially when you only have one available to you to charge up, and the base reload on it is quite long. It's like 130 seconds reload on this airstrike, where Johan is at 100 seconds base. PVO is at 160 though, so you get it back a little bit sooner. And I did manage to just barely get those 50 bomb hits right at the end of the game. Didn't really matter too much, but that is everything procced on Conrad. I was really trying to get that, and it was quite difficult to get myself the 50 bomb hits, especially. Just we didn't have enough airstrikes to go around for that. But managed to do it in this one. Really, you're going for the extra damage with Conrad, and then hoping for that Witherer to help your main guns out even more. It's a solid ship. It really is. Speijk is a solid ship. It is a ship, though, that I do not have on my main account. It's not one that I'm particularly interested in personally, just because I already have the PVO at tier 10 if I want to play a gun-focused Dutch cruiser with some airstrike potential, long-range airstrike potential. I'll just personally play the PVO. This ship, though, is not for steel. Again, back to Research Bureau. Price is steep at 46,500, but quite a bit less than the tier 10s would be for research points. So if you're interested in the gun-focused Dutch heavy cruiser playstyle, you still get some airstrikes, but you want better guns. I do think this one is somewhat interesting. The problem being, though, it's very, very similar to the tech tree ships. It's not that different. If you can notice the difference between cruiser dispersion and battle cruiser dispersion on other ships that you've been playing before, maybe then? It's hard for me to say that, though, honestly. It is just so similar to the tech tree ships. Oftentimes, you're going to find that the 12-kilometer airstrike range on Johan, 13 kilometers on Gouden, is more than enough for the games that you're in. The extra range here, 15 kilometers on the airstrikes, is nice, but a lot of the time it's not really going to make that much difference, and you'd much rather have the faster reload as well as the ability to charge up 2 strikes base on these ships versus just the 1 that you get on the Van Speijk here. So personally, I am not that interested in getting it, even though I had really good games in it while playing for this video. I was surprised at how well things went. Perhaps I just spent more time focused on playing a heavy cruiser role with the added bonus of airstrikes rather than focusing on the airstrikes. Perhaps that's what I missed initially with this one. I really focused on the downsides too much of lacking an extra airstrike charge, the longer reload on these airstrikes, the larger reticle size with the same number of bombs for less bomb density. Perhaps that's what I was focused on too much, because I really did go into making this video thinking that I was just going to call this a bad ship that no one should go for. But in fact, I've changed my mind. Even though I personally won't be going for it, if you're at all interested in that PVO playstyle at tier 10, but you just know steel is far too expensive for you, it's out of your reach, then I think this is an interesting example to get you a tier 9 version. We do, though, unfortunately have to talk about tier 9 matchmaker as well with this ship. Tier 8, tier 9 matchmaker, these two I think are some of the worst tiers to play when it comes to matchmaker quality. The up tiers into super ship tier are frequent enough and frustrating enough that tier 9 is not the greatest tier to play. Even if super ships aren't as common at these days, especially on North America, you still get those small games on NA with super ships. And, well, let's be honest, super ships are more than a tier better than tier 10. So for a tier 9 to be facing that, you're almost facing a 3 tier or even 4 tier up tier at times, depending on the power level. That, of course, isn't a specific problem to Van Speijk, but it is worth mentioning that these tier 9s do struggle these days to matchmaker. It's no longer the blessed tier of years ago where you had +1, -2, and often got that -2 into tier 7 games. Tier 9 used to be the absolute best tier to play. And no longer, unfortunately. There's a lot of pretty good premiums. Tier 9's a great tier to be farming credits, of course. You get that full premium benefit. But these days, it is hard to play. Another E game and a Kraken in this one as well. Playing it aggressively worked out very well for me a lot of the time. And it really is quite a comfortable ship to play as well. Simply because the airstrike range pretty much matches your main gun's firing range. So you're not really getting yourselves into situations where you want to get in range for these airstrikes, but then you over push and die. At least I find that happens to me sometimes with the light cruisers or the heavy cruiser tech tree ships. Here, though, having 15-6 on your main guns and 15 on the airstrike means that anytime you're able to shoot your main guns, you're often able to use your airstrike. It's a small thing, but it does make this ship more comfortable to play. Now that we're in port, though, this armor is quite good. 25 mil, this is where the main was smashing us, by the way. But 30 here, 50 here, icebreakers pretty much all around. That's a very tanky tier 9 cruiser. Very, very well armored tier 9 cruiser. We even have a good amount of turtleback here. 200 millimeters, 40 millimeters here. 240 to get through to the Citadel, including a 30 millimeter well-sloped turtleback. That's very, very good. If we look at the Harlem, which is essentially the same hull, they gave it 25 only. So all the battleships you're facing will be overmatching that. So the turtleback doesn't matter against battleships. It only matters against cruisers, which is still nice, but this starts to matter against a lot of battleships. Really only once you get to Republic and above do you actually start to overmatch through this. Very, very nice, well-armored ship. Even 200 here on the bow. But I'm pretty sure what happened was main shells happened to hit us here and then hit us in the Citadel there. Unfortunately. For the most part, though, that shouldn't happen. When angled, it's very, very well armored. The superstructure isn't terribly large either. It's a pretty tanky ship, especially with the heals coming back so quickly. 30-second fires. It's got a 5-kilometer hydra, which is always nice to have as well. You notice, though, taking that torp at the very end of that last game, though, Yeah, Airstrike mod instead of prop mod here. I was going for mostly Airstrike as much as I could, and I got a lot of value out of it personally. But maybe you want to go for prop mod, really just lean into full heavy cruiser roll and then just have the extra airstrikes as a bonus. But getting the reload time down to just below 90 seconds felt good enough, I would say. Still not amazing, but good enough to be useful here. The plane HP is actually not bad either on these planes. They're relatively tanky. They should be getting through quite a bit of AA. And as for the build for this ship, I really wanted to go mostly a heavy cruiser roll, but definitely want focus fire training here for the 15% better airstrike reload. Again, helping us make use of that airstrike, even though it is heavy cruiser roll mostly. The airstrike is very useful. Landing those permafires after someone damage controls, even a lot of alpha damage into those battleships. It's really, really nice. Of course, going superintendent with these really good heals. Concealment getting us down to 9.8. That is excellent for high tier, like heavy cruisers especially. Even light cruisers. 9.8 is great, DZAC. This is really, really useful for sneaking around the map, getting yourself into good positions. Demo expert, because the more fires we get with Conrad, the more likely we are to actually get ourselves a Witherer, which will then give us 10% main gun reload and another 15% airstrike reload, which almost got it down to 60 seconds there with the help of some adrenaline rush. Really want gun feeder, HE, primary ammo type, but the AP is no joke either. And if a cruiser gives you broadside, more than worthwhile getting that armor piercing online. Van Spike's pretty good, man. I had really good games while playing with this one. Again, I personally won't be getting it just because I have the PVO, and if I want this heavy cruiser main guns focus with some airstrike in the background, I'll just play that one. But again, if you can't get that one, if steel is out of reach, I think this is a reasonable one to get. Although, let's be honest here, it's not that different from the tech tree, which is much, much easier to get. That's been a bit of a theme for these Research Bureau ships, and that continues here, where there's ships that are available in the regular tech tree that you don't have to pay for with doubloons, you don't have to pay for with extra grinding time, where these Research Bureau ships take a lot of grinding if you don't have the excess free XP, that I would just recommend you go for the mainline and play around with those if you're interested in the airstrike playstyle, and maybe skip on Van Spike for now. Wait until you're quite a bit further along in your grind in this game. But that's going to do it for today's video on the Van Spike. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. As always, it's very good to get multiple perspectives. So if you are interested in this one, definitely check out the comments and see what others have to say. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.